Okay, this is my roundup of the best novels of 2015. I'm going to do the best non-fiction tomorrow. Um, I hope you don't mind my slightly weirdly silhouetted uh, face. It's just dark outside, and I couldn't be bothered to turn the light on. Okay, so honourable mentions go to um, Grief is the Thing with Feathers by Max Porter. Um, it isn't really a novel, it isn't a poem. It is a kind of extraordinary meditation on Ted Hughes's Crow and death. I think it's going to require reading and rereading. It's a beautiful and um, intense piece of work, but I'm not sure it works as a single reading, which I kind of feel a novel has to do, even if you go back to it more and more and more. Um, the other honourable mention is Marilyn Robinson's Leela, which is the third in the trilogy set in Gilead. Um, uh, you may know that I love Gilead and Home deeply. They may be my favourite novels of the 21st century and some of my favourite novels of all time. Um, Therefore, the reason I'm, I can't, the pressure when I was reading Gilead was almost too much to bear, and so I feel I'm going to have to reread it again, and therefore I didn't, I just didn't feel kind of emotionally ready to read it kind of openly. It was my expectations were just too high, um, and therefore, which was actually a bit how it was like how I felt when I read Home after reading Gilead. Um, and when I read Home the second time, it moved me incredibly. And now I don't know which I love more, Gilead or Home. So Leela doesn't make it into the list um, this year, but could well make it into the list next year or of all time, as it were. But the reading experience requires less pressure than it arriving and me starting it with great expectations, as it were. Obviously, not with great expectations, the novel with great expectations of it. Because I did read Great Expectations this year. Um, okay, so it's been a year of independent presses for me, and so the five books I've chosen all come from very small presses, uh, two in the UK and one in the US. If you feel like buying these, please buy direct from the publishers via their website because then they make the most money and they can continue to function. Obviously, if you're a poor student or just don't have a great deal of money, then there are places to get these books discounted, but it does mean that the publishers don't make very much profit at all. I mean, I think the head of Galley Beggar Press did a kind of breakdown of costs that if you buy a book from Waterstones, Waterstones make about £4 and the press makes about 54p, um, which is clearly not right. And I think the writer makes about 90p or something. So yes, so first is this, which I haven't finished, but I love it incredibly. It's by the wonderfully named Coffee House Press. It's called Genoa, A Telling of Wonders by Paul Metcalf, and it is a meditation on I don't know what, but it's a meditation. It's a Paul Metcalf is the great grandson of Herman Melville. The book is full of quotes from Melville's works, Melville's diaries, Melville's, but it's also full of quotes of Christopher Columbus discovering the Indies. But it's also at the same time a novel about two men, two brothers who are, like Paul Metcalf, related to Melville. So it is a very odd mixture of kind of textual biography, textual psychology, writing of the highest order. Now, of course, I should have found the passage I was going to read, but there was a passage quite near the beginning where the narrator was talking about how his brother, who's quite a big-framed, big-headed, slightly monstrous creature, how he would hold a book in his hands, and it is extraordinarily vivid, and the writing demonstrates an acute observation of how a big man will hold a book in his hands loosely, but with power and confidence, and the relationship of holding a book in one's hand. For that alone, the novel is worth reading. I think I said when I was talking about when I was going to read it, it's called a symphonic novel. I'm not sure that's right, but certainly it has themes that sort of move and have relationships to each other through these endless parts of the writings of other people. If you want a very formally experimental book that talks about, I don't know what it is. It's sort of about. I mean, the narrator is actually just sitting in the attic of his house, and his house is very much like a ship on the edge of a city, and he just ruminates on Melville and Columbus using their diaries and their work, and I'm halfway through it, and it is extraordinary. The writing of all of the people. I mean, Melville was just an extraordinary writer, and I must read Moby Dick again. But it's just such a wonderful concatenation of ideas that seem somehow to fit so sublimely together. But that's it. So I reckon I'm going to drink some wine. That's quite nice, actually. Okay. Next one is A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing by, I've never known how to pronounce her first name, actually, so Miss McBride. This came out, I think, the year before last and won the Orange Prize, but I only got to it this year. And it is essentially part of what I call the Republic of Consciousness, i.e. by reading this, one enters into the consciousness of a human being in a new way, and that is the life from almost kind of pre-birth to 21 of an Irish woman, girl, child, and her relationships to the world. And it manages to do something that very few stream of consciousness books do, which is probably map how language is in the brain, i.e. we don't, as much as we think we think in real and full senses, we don't. We probably think in fragments, and this is a book of fragments of the fragmented language of our perceptions, and it does it brilliantly, and it's compulsive, and it's moving, and it's honest, and it's a great work of literature, and is hugely deserving of its prizes, and she's deserving of all the accolades, but mostly the risk that Gallibegger Press took in publishing it, given that it hadn't found a publisher for 9 years. And that, I think that's a kind of, object lesson, cautionary tale for everybody in giving up. If you've written a world-class work of literature, it can take 9 years or more to find a publisher. And to all of those main publishers and agents who turned it down, shame on you. The next Gallibegger one is Playthings by Alex Phoebe, which I've already reviewed, but just to kind of recap, I think I called it Writing of the Highest Order, based on the fact that these are some of the most perfect sentences you will ever read, and the most perfectly controlled sentences. Alex Phoebe knows exactly what he wants to put into a sentence, and therefore, as I said before, there are no semicolons, because he doesn't add a little bit of thinking to a sentence, he integrates it. But what it's about, it comes from the diaries of of a man who had a breakdown in the turn of the century, 19th to 20th. Um, and this is a kind of, as I think I said before, this is trying to express the lived experience of madness. Um, and it has echoes of Kafka and Thomas Mann, but it doesn't try and understand the madness. It tries and make you. It allows us to feel it in all its terrifying, claustrophobic, confusing, and desperate. Um, the the desperate kind of phenomenology of madness. So we're looking through the eyes of madness, and for that reason, it is a tour de force, and worth reading. As oops, it's falling on the floor. 1 second. This is probably this from Fitzcarraldo editions, probably the funnest read of all books I've read this year and for a long time. The wonderful short stories, don't know, just Bits of Life by Claire Louise Bennett. If you haven't listened to my review, please go, because I read a bit from it. She writes in the most exuberant, somewhat eccentric, and enjoyable prose, and individual and original prose of anyone in a long, long time. And this, it may be a bit kind of zeitgeisty to write about the minutiae of life, but no one does it with such charm. And she is a writer of just stupendous gifts, and originality and wonderment, and I just loved this so much. But really, my book of the year, and I think it was published the year before, has to be Zone by Matthias Ennar. The reason for that is I think this is the most serious novel ever written by anybody ever. It's deeply human. It's beautifully written, but I don't. I mean, what do these writers think they're doing compared to this novel, which is essentially tries to deal with human cruelty, the fact of human cruelty. It's about the zone of conflict of the 20th century. Spanish Civil War, North Africa, Israel, obviously the Second World War, and why human beings behave that way. And it's interesting because the narrator has been part of a conflict, arguably on the wrong side, and has done terrible things. And so it becomes a novel of redemption as he then tries to. The novel, just so you know, is we're essentially inside the mind of the narrator as he travels from Milan station to Rome station, where he's going to deliver a briefcase with the names and the evidence of atrocities over the last century. But actually, what we are listening to is his thoughts about this as he travels he's in a slightly kind of heightened state with alcohol and drugs and the desperation he feels. And it's written in one sentence, the whole novel, although there's lots of punctuation. It's exactly the length of the train journey, the miles, and that is, I will tell you, 521 miles between Milan and Rome. But the extraordinary part about this is and I still haven't been able to articulate it to anybody, and I'm not doing a very good job here, is that he doesn't dehumanize people by talking about their acts. He also doesn't humanize them either. What he does is make us recognize that there were human beings operating in those places, and it became part of just being human in those situations. One could use that phrase from Hannah Arendt, the banality of evil, and that would to a certain degree get close to what this is about. But that's too dry a phrase, and maybe might be slightly off-putting, because this is an incredibly hugely energetic book. It has huge passion and drive and momentum, which the one sentence is. I mean, it's not difficult to read because it creates momentum. Um, uh, but I just feel that it is a novel of the utmost seriousness. Of what did Matthew Arnold call certain art of high seriousness. Um, but that's probably going to make everyone think, God, this must be so dry and awful. It's not. Um, it's a extraordinarily vivid and dynamic book, but it is not afraid of the the of I'm going to say it's kind of making a judgment. I'm not even sure it does make a judgment on us. It makes a judgment on our the kind of workaday world we live in, even when people are torturing other people, and that the torturer can go on and live a really ordinary life after that one pocket of time where they behaved like some kind of monster. And I suppose, given what's happening in the Middle East at the moment with who we're now supposed to call Daesh, um, it does make you wonder whether the people who are committing the atrocities there, um, you know, can they commit an atrocity and then go into a room and sort of and and behave like completely ordinary human beings? And could they, if they decided to leave, just be completely ordinary human beings for the rest of their life? Can these things exist in that pocket of time, or do they endure with us? I think that's a question it asks. Um, so it's incredibly serious, asks very serious questions, but it's ultimately an incredibly redemptive book, and I think we need to bear that in mind. So that's it, I think. Um, I mean, I think what's interesting from Fitzcarraldo, these are beautiful produced books, is the most serious novel I think that's ever been written, and probably the most enjoyable pieces of writing. Enjoyable, I mean, in the sense of the amount of joy they give, both from that press. But I think that's it. So thank you very much, Galliberger and Fitzcarraldo Editions, for your 4 novels. I bought them, by the way. They weren't reader copies or anything. And I look forward to reading more Paul Metcalf from Coffee House Press next year. So unless I read something stupendous between now and the new year, that's my roundup. It is quite long. I apologise. But yeah, cheers, and I'm sure a happy New Year, or Christmas, or whatever holiday you celebrate. Bye bye.